Okay, this video is gonna be a video about who's like the best of the Tsuchikages, like who did that job the best. So what do you have to take into account? You have to take into account their strength as the Tsuchikage, like were they actually the most powerful shinobi in their time, which typically they are. That's why they would have the position, like one of the reasons why, right? But also, can they like keep the village hidden in the stone in this case, right? Because the Tsuchikage is the Kage of the hidden stone. Do they keep the hidden stone safe from like outsiders and shit, right? Do they have good diplomatic, relations with the other villages when they need to? You know, do they, um, not have, you know, problems with, their like Jinchurikis, like their powers? Do they understand that these Jinchurikis can't be just, given away, or you have to like they have to like know how to like rein them in, right? Because in the balance of power and all that, these villages can't be coming in here and taking our tail beasts. They already have their tail beasts. We have to go to war with them. We can, but it's not like we have our own. Like, you're not gonna just let your village down. You're not gonna go off on your own fucking thing, and then your village, suffers for it, right? Because there's some people who do that. Like, this is why some people are not good at their job, but they would have been better at their job had they not made a foolish mistake, right? Like this guy. So I have at number 4 in this list of like who did the job the best as a Tsuchikage. He's the worst one, right? This is Mu, because Mu's powerful. See, it's funny how that works, right? Because Mu is actually the most powerful Tsuchikage. He knew of he had the Kekitoda, you know, the particle style. He was known as the Null Man. He could, use fire, earth, wind release and create, he could atomize people, basically vaporize them, right? Down to the atomic level, right? Um, he decided he wanted to go fight against somebody from the Mist Village, who was, at the time, it was the second Mizukage, and they decided they wanted to fight each other to see who was stronger. So his ego got in the way, and he basically left the village, without a Kage for some time. Of course, that position gets filled, but like me looking at that, I'm like, you don't just do shit like that, right? It would be different if Gengetsu, right? Because that's the guy who we fought, right? Came into the hidden stone village and started fucking shit up. Then, he would have had, reason to go after him and shit. But he just was like, oh, I think I'm stronger than this guy, and he thinks he's stronger than me, so we're gonna fight. You know, had he been a Jonin, that would have been fine, right? Because Jonin, you know, they're not the ones that the village look to for, guidance, or, you know, this is the person who's supposed to be here to protect us when, shit gets hard. Now this guy's dead. Like, our fucking guy's dead now, who was supposed to be the most powerful Tsuchikage of all time. You know, he didn't do his job well. You know, once we talk about other Kages, I'll show you what they do when they do their job right. Like, the people above them do their job right. Like, this is the third person, right? That is Korosuchi. That is Onoki's granddaughter, right? She became the Tsuchikage after him. After he became way too fucking old, he was just like, I'm done. He did his whole like century, 10-year or whatever the fuck he did. And he said, I'm done, right? And then it was his granddaughter. See, she's the Kage like currently, right? The Tsuchikage currently, and she controls the Stone Village, right? She has like decent, diplomatic relations with like Naruto and the rest of the, villages, right? It's pretty damn good, because they fought in the fourth grade ninja war together, and they're kind of familiar with who each other who they are and other things. Communication is better because guess what? Technology exists now, and they can communicate different ways they couldn't do before, right? But she's not the most powerful because it's a collective. It's not just about being the most powerful, but it's also not about being the weakest. You know, when it comes to her, I think she's the weakest one of the Tsuchikages. Like, out of all the Tsuchikages there ever was, she was the weakest one still. And it's like, she has like the cement style or whatever it's called. You know, quick creep, quick creep juice. you know, you know, and it's she fought against people but she had to have help, right? She came to help Naruto fight against the Otsuki in that movie, right? She is not as good as these two, and the impact on the Hidden Stone and what it had, right? Um, now she's ruling during peace times and that shit, but it's still not as impactful because guess what? Strength ain't there, and really, once these Otsukis like really get going, she can't do shit. Like let's Otsuki comes to the Hidden Stone, she can't do shit. Like by herself, she can't do shit. Most of them could, but she really can. So, but she's better than Moo, because like she never left her position. She would at least stay and fight some way. And it ain't like Moo wouldn't fight, but he went to go fight on some like dumb shit. I want to fight this guy because he's the strongest. And he thinks he's the strongest, and I'm the strongest. So we're gonna fight. Whatever happens, happens. I think I'm gonna win, but they ended up both dying. And she is not that powerful. But the next person is actually important to the Hidden Stone because this is that video about that, right? Not about all the other shit, right? The Hidden Stone village would have never came into existence if it wasn't for this guy, you know. Onoki's grandfather. He had iron in his beard, right? And he created the Will of Stone, because he created the village. And, the Will of Stone is like, we need to make sure this village don't fall apart. He's teaching Onoki about rocks. Like, every single pebble is important in this great, village of ours. One stone, another one, and it takes work and time. But hey, guess what, boy? That shit comes to be, something beautiful. And he's teaching him this shit. And, he was also at the Five Kage Summit. He understood that his tail beasts were 4 and 5 tails. Because that's what Hashirama gave him. He was fine with that. Right? He was, somewhat powerful. He could fly and shit like Onoki can. He knew Earth style. Now he wasn't like Moo and Onoki used, other jutsus. But for his time, he was able to hold down in case an attack came. Shit, but he was just old. He lived out his tenure and died and shit. Right? But Moo was the one who went to the Kage Summit, so he gave him the position next. But the village would have never came to be if it wasn't for this old man, getting people together and being like, hey, let's be the Stone Village. We already help each other out and other things or whatever. Let's just come together and be the Hidden Stone Village. And they're like, okay, cool. You're strong. You'll protect us. They went to the Five Kage Summit. He was given the tail beast. And then, the Hidden Stone just, did his thing from there. But the best one is Onoki, right? So Onoki, the fence sitter, he was Tsuchikage for basically a long time. I don't know how long, but we'll say definitely more than 50 years. Like, that's a fact. More than 50 years. Way more than 50 years. He came into power after Mu died, right? You know, and it's funny too because guess what? The No Man could have just been the No Man and been like legendary shinobi. You don't have to be a Kage to be a legendary shinobi. That's what some people don't get. They're kind of stupid. But Mario Uchiha and all these other niggas, man. You know, he could have had his fight and other things, and it wouldn't have like left problems. But he came in and he handled that shit. Right? He made amends. He's like, okay, that guy did that. Don't worry, I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna make sure these tail beasts don't get too crazy. These tail beasts ended up being Han and Roshi. Han and Roshi. They ended up fighting during the Third Great Ninja War. They fought against Minato and shit, right? I think um, they were around, right? And then they went off to do their own thing. Data joined the Akatsuki. But a lot of shit happened during his reign. But you're like, oh my god, but those sound like a lot of problems and shit. Da, 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 da. But the hidden stone was still there. That's my whole point, right? So even though all these problems came about, like the Jinchuriki left the village, they got caught. Then they were without that kind of power. But it wasn't because of another village. It was because of the Akatsuki. And he knew about the Akatsuki member of his own. And he was like, oh, fuck. But eventually he got called out because the Raikage at the 5,000 was like, hey, man, you produce members of the Akatsuki. Every one of your villages did, but not, mine. And that was the Raikage saying that, right? And he's like, oh, well, fuck, that's just how it is and other things. But then, he was, he woke up because he's old at this point, right? He's like 80 something or 90 something, something like that. He's old as fuck. He cracked out another thing, man. This man was like, fighting against Madara Uchiha back when he was a boy and shit, right? So when it came time to fight, he was, he saw Madara. And he was like, that's the real Madara Uchiha, not that guy over there. This is the real guy. Um, and he was like, he stopped one of the meteors and then he, got smashed. But then, when the five Kages came together and they started, falling like quickly, he's like, no, 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 we gotta get back up. We cannot fucking stop. He encouraged them to like keep on fighting, fight through pain and all that, because we are the strongest, ninjas in the village, from what, people know, as far as, our people know and shit. And we gotta, stop this guy from bringing the world to the end. So he did that. He inspired them to do that, and then he like reigned for a little bit after that, right? After the war and shit, he was still doing shit. But at some point, he got in a wheelchair and he was like, you know what? It's been like 100 years, or something like somewhere between 50 and 100 years. My granddaughter can take the spot. I'll just be here as one of the elders now. And still fucking breathing and shit. Boruto. You know, and that village is still fucking standing. So I don't give a fuck what anybody says. I want to be the best one. Now he's not the most powerful, but he's the best one at doing his job. Because strength in using your jutsu is one thing, but you also have to know how to talk to other villages. Know where your tail beasts are. Know how to fix the situation if it goes south. He could have easily been like, oh no, I don't want to join the Allied Shinobi forces because he's an old, cracked out part. But then he knew, he heard modern, and he was like, you know what? I'll help you guys out because this guy is not no fucking joke. And I've actually seen the man. So the worst Tsuchikage move, the next um one that's like decent at doing her job is Court Suchi. The next one is the first Tsuchikage, and then the next one is Onoki the fencer. He was the best one, if you ask me, at like doing his job and all that. Now, be cool, call in the corner, and I'll actually make another one today because I feel like it. But be cool, call in the corner, and let me know what you think about that in the comments. This is not a video about strength and power scale. This is about who did their job better. and he did the best job for his village, you know, and it's for his village. It's not about what he does for other people. You know, that does play a role in it though, because that's like relations with other villages, not creating conflict, but also creating harmony between those villages, so there is no, you know, battling and war between that shit, you know, peacetime and shit, right? But be cool, call in the corner. Let me know what you think about that.